In this week's tutorial, I'm going to talk you through a very fashionable table arrangement that is currently very fashionable for wedding table centres. If this is something that you would like to learn, then keep watching today's tutorial. So welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be using a new container that I've bought from a supermarket. Now this has come from Sainsbury's, which is a shop here in the UK, and it does still have the manufacturer's label on it. And the reason is I've literally just bought them. I didn't want to wash it because that sometimes prevents the Oasis or the Floral fix from sticking. So you're going to have to accept there's a label on the bottom. These come in a variety of sizes. I think I've got a little one somewhere. And these are great for little table arrangements. Now the current trend for wedding floristry is to have what we call a tablescape. So rather than having one arrangement in the middle, you have several flowers or several flower arrangements grouped together. And there's a big fashion as well for compote bowls, which sort of look like this. They're really quite hard to get hold of at the moment, or they're very, very expensive. So I'm thinking that I'm going to try and do a DIY job and make myself one of these very trendy bowls. But for today, I'm just going to use that size there. And I'm not going to worry that the inside of this is like a mustardy shade, because you're not going to, I'm hoping you're not going to see it when it's finished. I'm going to use floral foam, but I might repeat this with a floral frog or a pin holder in the middle so that you get to see two different versions. But first of all, I'm going to attach floral fix to the bottom and then a plastic frog to the floral fix, and hopefully that will give me a secure enough attachment to hold my floral foam into position. That is going to sit on top of there. And if you are doing this yourself at home, what I would recommend, or if you're a florist in a shop, attach that the morning before you're going to attach the Oasis, so it gives a chance to dry and stick properly. Sometimes when you add the floral foam straight on top, the water seeps underneath and it unsticks. So that's my mechanics. My floral foam is just about 1/3 of a block, and that's going to sit in the container there. And I am going to take a little bit off the top. Now, this is a no foliage design. You might have seen them in wedding magazines. If you're an Instagram or a Facebook follower, then you might have seen these designs popping up. They're really quite fashionable. They're very light and airy. I didn't do a very good job of that today. They're very lightweight and airy. And the difficulty as a wedding florist is that if your bride wants to take the designs home, you either have to have an insert in there or you have to give them these containers to take away, and then that makes the design quite expensive. But what I'm trying to do here, and I'm not doing a very good job, is I'm taking the foam down a little bit so it's more in line with the edge of the container, and then I've got less to cover at the end. I could round that off if I wanted to, but I'm not going to do it today, and you would have even less foam again. So because there's no foliage to hide the foam, using a large piece of foam is going to be counterproductive because you're going to use lots of flowers to cover the base. So go with the smallest amount of foam you can get away with. Probably if I was doing this not for a video, I would use less again. But when you're beginners, sometimes you need that bigger piece of foam. And the idea is that the flowers are quite tall, they're really compact and close together, and then you heavily base the bottom with very expensive flowers, or in my case, chrysanthemums. Quite often you'll see it with a big hydrangea and a group of gyp. You might see it with some very big open roses, and that's the current trend and the current style that's coming through in floristry at the moment. And that will be repeated in different style containers. So we're moving away from round tables to long tables, and we're also having what we call caterpillar tables, where it's not in a straight line, and this is the next trend. If you're in London, you've probably been doing it for a couple of years, but I'm out in Wales, and it takes a little while for this fashion and style to come to me. Right, so what I'm going to start by doing is using one of the double chrysanthemums. So I probably wouldn't sell this as a cut flower because it's similar to something you would get in a supermarket, and I want to set myself apart from the supermarket. But what it does do is it covers the bottom of my foam really, really quickly and efficiently. I'm going to use white in a minute as well. But what we're looking to do is to create that base layer. Not quite the same as basing funeral tributes. This is a bit more casual, not quite such a set pattern. And then with the smaller pieces that I've got, or the smaller head size, they're going to be used higher up. So I'm going to keep hold of those. This doesn't have to be a chrysanthemum. It can be gyp, all gyp. It can be gyp with chrysanthemums. It can be a hydrangea. It can be big open roses. What we don't use is greenery, which is what we would traditionally use. And I'm not coming out at the sides. My design is going upwards, a little bit like a parallel. So very much like a country, loose, traditional sort of whimsical style parallel arrangement. So we can keep going. We don't want to cover too much of the foam because obviously I want to get flowers in there. That does really the job that fresh foliage would normally have done. I've got one more that I'm just going to pop in around this side. And I did also say I was going to put white. Or is that cream? That's probably a cream. And I've gone with quite a generic, we have this conversation quite a lot. I've gone with like an oatmeal colour container because that's quite generic and it's going to mix with lots of different colour combinations. So what I'm now going to do with the white is slightly raise it up. So we have a second tier. Cover your foam, create a layer at the bottom and move up a layer. And if you've studied floristry, the nearest you're going to get to this would be a combination of form linear and a parallel arrangement. I'm not really sure where this trend came from. I'm guessing it's come from somebody that didn't want to have foliage in their weddings. And then we had the trend for covering the foam with gyp. And now we've got this trend for quite a whimsical design. So, a bit like a pudding. Roundy moundy at the bottom, and the only function for that is to cover your floral foam. Now we're going to start extending the height up. You can do it in a crescent with a gap in the middle, or you can bring them all up in a parallel style. And the flower combination I've chosen is stock, some open roses, which I'll talk about in a minute, and a little bit of eryngium and some Lissianthus. And what we're doing is containing the style of the arrangement within the shape of the container. Now, traditionally, an arrangement that went in the centre of the table would be low enough for you to see the people across the table, or it would have been above eye level so that you can include conversation. Now, nobody seems to care about that. And we're going to block the view across the table from one side to the other. And I think, this is my personal choice, that the youngsters all sit on their phones anyway. So they don't really care whether they can't see the person on the other side of the table because they're talking to somebody on their phone. But what I'm going to do is slightly extend it. So these are just parallel groupings, parallel lines, but I'm not coming outside, wide, outside of my container. And the container with this is almost sort of insignificant unless you have those lovely sort of compote bowls which look more like that. Next trend, look out for these containers. If you see them, let me know because they're really hard to get hold of. And then I'm going to go in with Lissianthus, and what you'll see with both of these is I've removed all of the greenery. There's no foliage in sight. You can leave greenery on, but for this I've taken it off, and we're going to do these little parallel groups. And I've chosen to leave a gap in the middle because I am conscious of the fact that there needs to be some gap in the middle so you can talk to the people across the table. And what I also think about these, which might upset the floristry world a little bit, is this style of arranging doesn't really need a lot of skill. You just plonk in flowers in, you're basing down low, you're not thinking about the elements and principles of design so much, you're just adding everything in at different levels, so anybody can do it, which seems again to be the bit of the trend at the moment in floristry, is that people don't seem to want to have any training anymore. They just decide they're going to be a florist and they start advertising themselves as florists, even though they have very little experience or training. So I've gone in 2 different groups and I've tried to bring the colour all the way down to the bottom. It's a very lightweight, whimsical sort of design. Next I'm going to go, Now this Syringium doesn't have really very many long pieces, so I'm going to cut it in to 2. We can have a taller one on one side and a shorter one in the middle, or rather on the opposite side. Now I'm doing this as an arrangement which has sort of 2 columns, a left and a right column, so to speak, but you can do it more circular. I've got 2 obvious placements. Depends a little bit on the choice of flowers that you've got and how big you want to go. Then I'm going in with a small amount of Statice. So I've picked materials that are lines and round shapes, so we've got a bit of a variation, and you just really keep on going, adding into the 2 columns. And then I'm going to use up the taller stems of my chrysanthemums. Now what I can't do when I finish this is go around and fill in with greenery at the base. I've got to use the same type of flowers that I've used at the top. If we look at it at the moment, I've got the darker purple of the Lissianthus at the top. I haven't got any at the bottom, so I'll fill in those little gaps with some of the darker Lissianthus. What I'm probably going to put in next is the white double chrysanthemum. And even though you might think of a double chrysanthemum, and double, I mean it hasn't got the little daisy section, you might think of a chrysanthemum as being a bit old-fashioned and not used a great deal in wedding work. It is really quite popular. So that's the basic shape taking place. Upright, massed flowers at the bottom. Now I'm going to add in some of my larger roses. And what I've done with, I think this is a labelle. This is a really delicate, soft pink rose. I've reflexed them back slightly. Now the difficulty with reflexing is that the rose itself has to be a good few days old. You need to remove all the outside petals and then you just bend the petals back. But if the rose is too fresh, this one's a nice fresh rose, it doesn't always work, and sometimes you can damage the rose. But that's reflexing, another really very fashionable trend at the moment. It's not new, reflexing's been around. I used to do it in the 80s. And in traditional floral design, the larger flowers are always at the base, but in this style of arranging, they can be at the top. It's almost like the bigger flowers are being shown off at the top. I've only got 4, no, I've got 5. So bigger ones at the top. Well, they can be anywhere, top, middle or bottom. They don't just have to be at the bottom, which traditionally they would be in if you're following normal elements and principles of design. And then what I'm going to do with the 2 that were too tight for me to open, I'm going to put these right down at the base. So we're still trying to get an even distribution of the colours, but not in quite a formal pattern. So that's where we're up to at the moment. Now this is a design in this style is seen from both sides. So this has been done as a table centre. And if we look at it from this side, you can see I've got a lot more of the purple Lissianthus. If it was a front-facing design, that would be fine, but I need to add in some darker purple on that side there. So remember, if it's an all-round design, the colour needs to be front and back. and what is on one side needs to be replicated on the other. It doesn't have to look the same, there just needs to be a similar colour balance. And then what I'm also going to do with really short pieces of Lissianthus, like so, is put one or two down low to help cover the foam. And that's one of the areas of this style of arranging that I find difficult, is you're using your best quality flowers right down low to cover your floral foam. Now, if you've got a deeper container, you can keep the foam lower than the edge, and then you've got less to cover. I wouldn't recommend covering with moss, because then you get that untidy look. But if you are making it more countrified looking, more of a rustic country style, then yes, use some moss. But we're not looking for that traditional look at the bottom. We're looking for something that's quite streamlined and quite elegant. And I've got a few gaps here and there. And if I had more of this style rose, that would work quite well to cover the base. And now what I've really got to consider now is, do I get some more of this colour, or do I go for some more of the lilac? And I've got more of the lilac, so let's go with the lilac. Remove any of the guard petals, remove anything that's damaged, and I'm going to add some in at the top. So in traditional floristry, we use something called negative space, which is the gap in the middle or the gap to the side. And what I would probably say with this is there's very little negative space. We're really squashing everything in together. Gyp, September flower, all works really well. I'm going to add in some Broom or Genista in just a while, because that's really going to elevate this and give it that look that's so popular. And then with this, quite a fresh rose, so it's a bit difficult to reflex the petals. This is going to work nicely down at the bottom there to cover any little gaps. So let's go straight in there. And there's nothing wrong with you placing two flowers next to one another if you think that colour or texture is needed. And then my final addition is with the Genista or the Broom. This, I would say, is mainly a florist material. Don't often see this in a supermarket. And it's a flower that's mainly available just before Christmas and into the spring. The white is its natural colour. You will get it dyed quite subtly into different shades. It comes in a beautiful peach, a lovely lemon. And I'm using this just really like you would gyp, just to add that really frothy texture, that lightness, give it that airy feel. And you can put as much or as little of this in as you want. This, I think, is one of my absolutely favourite flowers. The perfume on it is just delightful. And it's one that I love to use when it's in its season. It's quite flexible. This one is on quite a tough stem. And sometimes you can get it that it's quite flexible and will bend really nicely, and it works really nicely in crescent shaped designs if you're looking at those old-fashioned Hogarth curves or crescents, or whether you're doing a fairly modern cascading hand-tied. It also works beautifully in that as well. Now, just as I finish this off by filling in any little gaps and hiding the floral foam, I'm going to remind you that you really do need to subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell to be told every time I upload a new tutorial. And if you want to participate in any of the online courses, then you'll find a discount code in the description box, which will give you 10% off all of the online courses. And there are hand-tied courses, both bridal and commercial hand-tieds. You'll also find some courses on traditional floral design and funeral work as well. So there's a whole host. There's over 80 lessons. And if you don't want to buy an individual course, you can pay for the monthly subscription, which gives you access to all 80 lessons. So that's the end of today's arrangement. This is a more modern version of a design that's suitable for the centre of a table. Don't forget to like and share and comment in the box below and ask as many questions as you want. So thanks as ever for watching. I look forward to seeing you for the next tutorial. Bye for now.